Somewhere in the dark, far beyond the last familiar star, there is a world so strange that when astronomers first saw what it was doing, they were certain their instruments had failed them. Tonight, we are going to explore a planet that should not be able to exist. It circles a young star, roughly 434 light-years from Earth, and it wears a system of rings so enormous that they would swallow the space between our sun and its nearest planets. Rings 200 times wider than the great pale rings of Saturn, more than 30 of them, stacked in faint bands across a distance you could not cross in 100 human lifetimes. When the first measurements came back, the scientists checked them and checked them again, because what they had found was stranger than anything they had dared to imagine. How can a single planet hold rings wider than the path the Earth travels around the sun? Where does all of that material come from? And what slowly becomes of it in the end? And why did this distant world stay hidden for so long? Until one quiet act of curiosity finally drew it out of the dark and gently changed what we believed was possible among the stars. If you find a quiet comfort in drifting off to the strange wonders of distant worlds, you might gently tap the like button or follow along, so these calm journeys can find their way back to you on another long night. Let's dive in. Imagine that you are lying on your back somewhere far from any city, on a warm night, with the grass cool beneath you and the air still. There are no streetlights here, no glow on the horizon, nothing between you and the open sky. Above you, that sky is not empty, it is crowded. There are thousands of points of light scattered across the dark, and each one of those points is a sun, a star, some of them far larger and far brighter than our own, and many of those suns hold worlds of their own, worlds you will never visit. Worlds that turn and glow and freeze entirely without you, without anyone, in a silence older than the earth itself. For almost all of human history, we had no way of knowing this. People lay where you are lying now and looked up at the very same lights, and they saw lamps hung in a dome, or the campfires of the dead, or small holes in a dark curtain with the brightness of heaven shining through from the other side. They drew the patterns into pictures, into hunters and bears and ships and kings. They told stories about them through the long nights. They steered their boats across trackless seas by them and planted their crops by them, and measured out the slow turning of the year by them. But they did not know that the little lights were other suns. And they could not even have dreamed that around those distant suns turned other worlds. Worlds of fire and ice and stone and metal. Each one a place, an actual place, with a surface or a sky or a storm of its own. It is worth sitting with how recent our knowledge really is. For thousands upon thousands of years, the wisest people alive simply did not know there were other worlds out there at all. The question was not even answered wrongly. It could not really be asked. And then, within a single human lifetime, within the span of years that someone now elderly has actually lived through, the answer arrived. We found the first one, And then we found another. And then, slowly at first, and then all at once, the floodgates opened. It is only very recently, in the last small handful of decades, that we learned the truth. We now know of more than 5,000 worlds beyond our own solar system. 5,000, and the number climbs higher every year, almost every month, as patient people pore over patient instruments. Each of those worlds was once just a flicker of doubt in someone's data, a faint wobble in a star's motion, or a tiny, regular dimming of its light. Something an astronomer noticed and could not quite explain and could not quite let go of. Almost none of these worlds were ever seen directly. They are too far, too faint, too lost in the glare of their suns. We know them the way you might know a person was in a room by the warmth left in a chair, by the shadow under a door, by the smallest signs that something was there. We find them by their gentle tug on their stars, or by the way they dim their stars a little as they pass in front, the faint and faithful clue that a world is crossing the light. And the strange thing, the wonderful and humbling thing, is that almost none of them look like home. We once imagined that other solar systems would be tidy copies of our own. Small rocky worlds gathered near the warmth of their star. Big gentle giants drifting in the cold beyond. Everything orderly and familiar and reasonable. Instead, we found a carnival. We found worlds of fire and worlds of glass. We found a planet the soft color of a faded rose, and a planet where the rain comes down as liquid metal, and a planet hotter than the surface of its own star. We found a world made largely of crystal, turning beside a dead and spinning sun. We found a world so light that it would float upon water, if only there were an ocean somewhere wide enough to hold it. We found giants wrapped in rings, and orphan worlds wandering alone, and planets that take longer to circle their suns than our entire species has existed. And among all of these, one world stands a little apart. One world, more than any other, seemed at first to break the quiet rules we thought the universe lived by. So let us go to it slowly. Let us take the long way there. The story begins with an ordinary star. A star with a name that sounds more like a license plate than a thing of beauty. Astronomers call it J1407. It is a young star. Very young by the standards of the cosmos. Only about 16 million years old. 16 million years may sound like an unimaginable age, and by the scale of a human life it surely is. But our own sun, by comparison, is 4.5 billion years old, nearly 300 times older. So old that this little star would be like a newborn resting in a crib beside a quiet, white-haired grandparent who has lived a long and full life. J1407 is roughly the same size and weight as our own sun will have been at that same tender age. A warm yellow point of light sitting far away in the southern sky. In a great loose family of young stars that all drifted into being together out of the same vast cloud of gas and dust, scattered now across the dark like brothers and sisters who have grown up and moved a little apart. It is much too faint to see with your eyes alone. You would need a telescope even to find it among its neighbors. And even then, it would be nothing special to look at. Just one more dim point among countless others. For a long time, no one had any particular reason to look at it twice. It was a number in a catalog. It was a faint light no different, to all appearances, from a million others. And that is exactly how the most extraordinary things so often begin, hidden in plain sight, waiting quietly inside the ordinary, asking nothing, until the right person happens to look at the right moment with the right kind of patient attention. Then, one day, someone did. And here we come to the heart of the matter, to the mystery and to the stakes. Because what makes this story worth telling is not only the planet itself, but the simple human moment that uncovered it. In the years around 2007, a survey of the sky had been quietly running. Night after night after night. Watching tens of thousands of stars at once, looking for the faint and regular dimming that happens when a planet passes in front of its star. The project had a homely, practical name, a name that simply described what it did. The super wide-angle search for planets. It was not built to find anything exotic or impossible. It was built to do one steady, useful job. To catch large planets crossing the faces of their stars, dimming them by a tiny, predictable amount, again and again, like the faint and faithful tick of a clock. The data piled up in a public database, mountains and mountains of measurements, the brightness of countless stars recorded over many nights, year after year, far more of it than any one person could ever hope to study. Most of it never looked at closely by anyone at all. It simply sat there in the quiet of the archive, waiting. The way a library full of unread books sits waiting in the dark after closing time. Now picture a graduate student named Mark, working under an astronomer named Eric Mamajek at a university in the cold northern part of the United States. They were not hunting for monsters. They were not chasing headlines. They were doing patient, unglamorous, honest work, sifting slowly through that public database, checking the brightness of young stars in that loose southern family, the kind of careful background labor that fills the long, quiet evenings of a scientist's life, the work that almost never makes the news, the work that simply has to be done by someone willing to do it. They were asking a modest and reasonable question. Do any of these young stars flicker or change in interesting ways? It is the sort of task that can feel endless, almost meditative in its repetition. Star after star, light curve after light curve, most of them flat and unremarkable, the brightness holding steady, night after night. Exactly as a well-behaved star is supposed to behave. The line on the screen running level and calm, telling you nothing. And then the next star, and the next, and the next. And then one star did something it had no business doing. When the data for J1407 scrolled past, the line did not hold steady. It plunged. The star did not blink. the way it would if a single planet had crossed its face for a few short hours. Instead, over the course of weeks, the light of this faraway sun dropped and rose and dropped again in a long, complicated, jagged stutter, dimming by more than 90% at its deepest, almost vanishing. And the whole strange episode dragged on for about 56 days. 56 days. Nearly 2 full months in which something enormous, something with structure, something with edges and gaps and layers, passed slowly across the face of that distant star and drank its light. Sit with that for a moment, because it is genuinely difficult to take in. A planet passing in front of its star is a quick event, over almost before it begins. The planet is a small, dark dot. The star is a wide, bright disk. And the dot slides across in a matter of hours, dimming the star by only a tiny fraction of a percent. The way a single small bird crossing a distant street lamp far down the road would barely change the light at all. That is the normal thing, the expected thing, the thing the survey was built to catch. But this was not hours, and it was not a fraction of a percent. This was nearly 2 whole months, and the star was very nearly blotted out, dimmed by more than 90% at the deepest part of its fall. Whatever crossed in front of J1407 was not a simple dark dot. It was something far, far wider than the star itself, and it had pattern inside it, structure, edges. The light did not simply fade away and then return. It flickered with fine detail all through its long descent, rising and falling on time scales of mere minutes, as though the thing passing by were not solid at all, but made, instead, of countless separate bands, some thick and some thin, with clear, empty gaps of nothing in between them. For nearly 2 months, then, this faraway sun, a star much like the one that warms our own days, lay partly hidden behind something enormous and intricate and unseen. While a graduate student, years later, and many trillions of miles away, traced the record of it line by line, and slowly understood that he was looking at something no one had ever seen before. This was the mystery, and to understand why it mattered, you have to understand what the scientists were really looking at. They were not seeing the object. They never saw it directly. It was far too distant, far too faint, hopelessly lost in the glare of its own star. All they had was a single curve, a wiggling line that recorded how bright the star was, minute by minute, over those 56 days. That was all. A line on a graph. From that line, and that line alone. They had to work out what kind of object could possibly cast such a shadow. Let us pause here, because this is one of the most beautiful and quietly astonishing things about astronomy, and it deserves to be explained gently and clearly. When we say that scientists discovered an object 200 times wider than the rings of Saturn, hundreds of light years away, you might picture a grand telescope swinging around and snapping a photograph. It was nothing like that. There was no picture. There was only the shadow, written in fading light, and the patience to read it. Here is a way to imagine the problem. Suppose you are sitting in a dark room at night, and far across the room there is a single candle. You cannot see anything else, only that one small flame. Now suppose that something begins to pass between you and the candle, something you cannot see. And the only thing you can do is watch how the candlelight changes. If a solid book slid across, the flame would simply vanish for a while, then return, sharp and sudden. But suppose instead the flame did something far stranger. Suppose it dimmed, then brightened a little, then dimmed more deeply, then flickered rapidly, then steadied, then faded almost to nothing, all over a long stretch of time. From those changes alone, without ever seeing the object, you could begin to reason out its shape. A long dimming means something wide. A flicker means something with structure, with thin parts and thick parts. A brief return of light in the middle means a gap, a clear space where nothing blocks the flame. Read carefully enough. The dance of that one small flame can draw you a picture of a thing you will never lay eyes on. That is exactly what the astronomers did with the light of J1407. They took the long, jagged record of its dimming, and they began, slowly and carefully, to ask what shape of object could have written it. There is another way to picture it. If the candle does not quite settle in your mind, imagine you are watching the shadow of someone passing behind a thin curtain, lit from the other side. You never see the person. You only see the shadow soften and sharpen, widen and narrow as they move. From the way the shadow changes, you could tell whether they were carrying something, whether they paused, whether they raised an arm. The light of the star was that curtain, and the rings were the shadow moving across it. And from the shape of that moving shadow, written in nothing but rising and falling brightness, the astronomers slowly drew out the form of a thing no telescope could ever resolve. It is detective work of the gentlest and most patient kind. A reading of clues so faint that most people would never have noticed there were clues at all. Now, the first answer they reached was already remarkable, but the full answer would take years. And this is where the human story deepens, because to claim something this strange is to risk a great deal. When Mark and Eric first looked at that bizarre light curve, they did not announce that they had found rings 200 times the size of Saturn's. That would have been reckless. Science is cautious, and rightly so. And a young researcher who claims the impossible had better be ready to defend it. So in their first careful report, around the year 2012, they proposed something more modest and more cautious. They suggested that the star had been eclipsed by a large disk of dust and debris, the kind of disk that might surround a very young giant planet, or a small failed star, a swirling pancake of material out of which moons might one day form. It was a bold idea even then. The community of planetary scientists had long believed, in theory, that young giant planets ought to be wrapped in such disks early in their lives, disks that later gather themselves into moons. But theory is one thing, and seeing it is another. No one had ever caught such a disk in the act of crossing a star. You can imagine the doubt that came with this. To stand up before your peers and say, "This faint stutter of light from a star you have never once seen clearly is the shadow of a giant ringed companion circling it," is to invite skepticism, and rightly so. Perhaps the star itself was simply unstable, the way some young stars are known to be, flickering and dimming for reasons all their own. Perhaps it was a fluke, a coincidence, a stray cloud of dust drifting by chance through the long line of sight between us and the star. There were quieter, smaller, less astonishing explanations that a careful person might reasonably prefer. And good scientists are trained to prefer them, to reach for the ordinary answer before the extraordinary one. And so the idea sat there for a while, intriguing, unproven, a little dangerous, the way the best ideas so often are in their early days, before anyone is sure. It would have been easy to let it quietly fade. It would have been easy to file it away as a strange one-off, a curiosity, and to move on to safer, surer work that would not draw doubtful glances. That is what usually happens to ideas this strange. They are too odd to prove and too tiring to defend, and they slip away. But the data was simply too interesting to abandon. The shape of that 56-day shadow would not let go of the people who had seen it. And so, rather than fading, the idea was passed onward, taken up by other patient hands, across the ocean at an old and storied observatory in the Netherlands. An astronomer named Matthew Kenworthy turned his attention to that same wiggling line. He and his colleagues went back to the raw measurements, the unsmoothed, unaveraged record of every flicker, and they began the slow work of building a detailed model. Not a guess, a model, a careful, mathematical reconstruction of what arrangement of rings, at what angles, at what distances, moving at what speed, could reproduce every rise and fall in that 56-day shadow. This is the part of the story I love most, because it is so unlike the way we usually imagine discovery. There was no dramatic instant, no single night at the telescope with someone gasping in the dark, no shout down a hallway. There was instead a long, patient, almost meditative labor, the work of fitting and refitting, adjusting and testing. A person sitting quietly with a difficult problem for months and then for years, letting it slowly come into focus the way a photograph used to slowly appear in a tray of developing fluid. Faint at first, then clearer, then unmistakable. The eclipse itself, remember, had already happened. Back in 2007, the light had already finished its long fall and slow recovery. The event was over. All that remained was the record of it, a string of numbers, and the question of what it meant. The discovery was not in the sky anymore. It was in the data, waiting. The way a letter sits unopened in a drawer, holding its news in perfect stillness until someone finally takes the time to read it. And what patience it required. The star changes too quickly, in some places, for any simple explanation. The brightness could shift noticeably in spans as short as a few minutes, which meant the structure crossing it had sharp, fine edges. Edges that swept past at tremendous speed. To capture that, the model had to include many separate rings, each with its own width, its own thickness, its own density, each blocking a different amount of light at a different moment. There was no shortcut. Each possibility had to be built and tested against the real record, and then gently set aside or kept, slowly, ring by ring. The picture assembled itself, the way a difficult piece of music, played over and over, finally settles into something a person can hold in their mind all at once. And when it finally came together, it described something that made even the people who had built it stop and sit back from their screens. So let us now come to the climactic moment, and let us take it slowly, the way the discovery itself unfolded, without any rush. When the model was complete, it showed a system of more than 30 distinct rings, not a handful, more than 30, nested one inside another. Like the rings you see spreading across a still pond when a single drop of rain strikes its surface, except frozen, vast beyond reckoning, and hanging silently in the dark of space. And the size of the whole arrangement is where the mind begins to slip its footing. The full diameter of this ring system is something close to 74 million miles. 74 million miles, edge to edge, all of it circling a single planet. Let that number settle slowly, because it means almost nothing until you give it a body you can hold. Consider this. The distance from the Earth to the Sun is about 93 million miles. So this single ring system, wrapped around this single planet, is nearly as wide as the entire distance from our world all the way to our Sun. Picture it. If you took that planet and set it down where the Sun now sits, its rings would reach out across the dark, past the place where any small inner world might orbit, almost all the way to where the Earth quietly turns. The whole inner solar system would fit inside the rings of this one planet, with room to spare. That is why the scientists said, again and again, almost as if they could not quite believe their own words, that if you could somehow take these rings and set them around Saturn in place of its own delicate bands, they would not be a faint and lovely thing you need a telescope to enjoy. They would fill the night. They would stretch across the sky many times wider than the full moon, a great glowing arch of pale light spanning the heavens, something you could see plainly from your own backyard, brighter and larger and more astonishing than anything the night sky has ever shown to human eyes, 200 times larger than the rings of Saturn. That was the conclusion the scientists reached, and they reached it carefully, reluctantly almost, because it was so much grander than anyone had expected. The rings of this distant world, the world we now call J1407b, are roughly 200 times the size of the most beautiful rings in our own solar system, the rings of Saturn. The rings that have made generations of children fall in love with telescopes. the rings that may have first made you long ago. Look up and wonder. And the planet at the center, the dark heart holding all of that material in its silent grip, is itself a giant, far larger than Jupiter, the great king of our own family of planets. Its exact weight is difficult to pin down, even now, but it is thought to be something enormous, somewhere between roughly 10 and 40 times the mass of Jupiter, a body so heavy that it sits right at the blurry, uncertain border between a true planet and a small, failed star that never quite caught fire. That never quite. And then there was one more detail. The detail that turns this from a mere curiosity into a living, breathing scene. Inside that great spread of rings, the model found a gap, a clean, empty lane, swept entirely free of material. A place where the rings simply stopped and then began again on the far side, like a missing groove in a record, or a cleared path through tall grass. Now, in our own solar system, we have seen gaps just like this before, in the lovely rings of Saturn, and we know rather well what tends to carve them. A moon. A small body orbiting within the rings. Its quiet gravity sweeping a clear path through the debris the way a plow clears a road of snow, gathering up everything in its lane and leaving a clean track behind. And so the astronomers reached a conclusion that is almost tender in what it suggests. In that gap, they believe a moon may be forming, or may already have formed. A brand new little world being born out of the leftover rubble. Something perhaps between the mass of Mars and the mass of the Earth. Think about what that means. We may, in other words, have been looking at the birth of a moon around a distant giant. The very process that, billions of years ago, in the deep youth of our own solar system, gave Jupiter and Saturn their great families of moons. The process we had only ever seen written out in equations and never once caught happening in the actual sky. We may have glimpsed it there, frozen in a single 56-day shadow. A new world quietly carving out its place in the dark. A birth recorded by accident in the dimming of a star, and only understood years afterward by someone patient enough to look. That is the planet that seems to defy all logic. A young giant, far heavier than Jupiter, wrapped in more than 30 rings that span nearly the distance from the Earth to the Sun. 200 times grander than Saturn's, with a gap where a new moon is quietly taking shape. And we know all of this not from a photograph, but from the patient reading of a shadow, from the way one faint star dimmed for 56 days, more than 15 years ago, and the refusal of a few curious people to look away. And here's the thought that stays with you. Once the wonder settles, this world is so strange, so seemingly impossible, that some astronomers still debate the finer points of how it can hold together, and whether its companion follows the orbit they first imagined. The universe handed us a puzzle that does not fit neatly into our old expectations. And rather than forcing it to fit, science did the harder and more honest thing. It widened its expectations. It made room. Because if one world can be this strange, then the rule is not that strange things cannot happen. The rule is that we had simply not yet looked. So now, having met the one world that broke the mold, let us do the gentle thing. Let us drift outward, slowly, and visit the others. Because once you have accepted that a planet can wear rings the size of a whole solar system, the rest of the catalog stops feeling impossible and starts to feel like an invitation. A long hallway of open doors. There is no hurry now. None at all. We will go from one to the next, slowly, the way you might wander through the quiet rooms of a great museum late in the evening, after the crowds have all gone home, when the lights are low and your footsteps are the only sound, and every strange and beautiful thing in the place waits patiently in its case for you, and you alone to come and notice it. We have all the time we need. Let us simply walk from world to world and look and wonder and move on, and let each one go as gently as we found it. The first world we drift to is a soft and surprising one. Surprising because of its color. It floats roughly 57 light years from Earth, which sounds impossibly far, and is, and yet, by the measure of these things, is one of our closer neighbors. It is about 4 times as heavy as Jupiter, though it is nearly the same size, which tells you it is densely and tightly packed. But the thing that makes this world remarkable is not its weight. It is that this planet is pink, a dull, dusky rose, a faded magenta, like the very last color left in the sky after the sun has gone down and before the true dark arrives. That soft and bruised purple pink that lingers low on the horizon for just a few minutes and then is gone. We do not usually think of planets as having colors of their own, as glowing faintly in the dark all by themselves. The planets we know best shine only with reflected sunlight, like stones at the bottom of a clear stream catching the light from above. But this distant world does not merely reflect, it glows. And the reason it glows is that it is young, only about 160 million years old. A mere child set against the vast and venerable age of our own solar system. A planet that young is still warm from the sheer violence of its own making, still holding the leftover heat of its birth deep inside. And that warmth leaks slowly out as a faint, dull light. The way the last embers at the bottom of a fire glow on quietly, long after the flames have died. When everyone else has gone to bed and only you remain, watching them fade. That dusky rose color is the light of a world still letting go of the warmth it was born with, cooling by the smallest measure, growing the tiniest bit dimmer with each passing age. Somewhere out there, right now, as you lie here, that pale pink ember is hanging in the dark, slowly cooling, on a timescale so long that no human life could ever notice the change. There is a strange comfort in a thing that cools that slowly. We are used to warmth that fades quickly, the coffee gone cold, the fire burned down to ash by morning, the heat of the day lost the moment the sun goes down. But this world holds its warmth across spans of time we can barely name, letting it go so gradually that across an entire human lifetime, across 100 human lifetimes, it would seem not to change at all. It will still be glowing its soft rose glow long after tonight is forgotten, long after this year is forgotten, long after everything any of us did or worried over has faded entirely from memory. It is in no hurry to grow cold. It has all the time there is. And as you lie here in the dark, you might let yourself borrow a little of that unhurried warmth, the sense of a heat that does not need to be guarded or rationed or rushed, a glow that simply persists, gently, patiently, across the long, quiet dark, asking nothing, fading by a measure too small to ever see. The next world we come to is gentler in temperament, a world of water, though not the kind of water you would ever want to touch. It is a little heavier than 8 times the mass of the earth, a thick and heavy world, and it is rich, astonishingly rich, in water. You might hear that single word, water, and feel a small leap of hope somewhere in your chest, because water, to us, means life. It means rivers and rain and lakes and the cool, clean thing you reach for when you are thirsty in the night. Of all the worlds we might dream of finding, surely a world of water is the one that might be kind to us. But this world is no twin of Earth, and the hope, though natural, is misplaced. It has no solid ground anywhere to stand on. No shore, no beach, no surface at all in the way we understand the word. And its water does not behave the way the water in your kitchen behaves. There, deep in the grip of that heavy world, the heat and the crushing pressure are so extreme that the water is neither truly a liquid nor truly a gas. It exists instead in a strange in-between state, a thick, hot, restless fluid that has some of the qualities of a liquid and some of the qualities of a vapor and is fully neither, both at once and neither at all. A kind of water that simply does not exist anywhere in your ordinary life. The temperature there climbs past 540 degrees Fahrenheit, far hotter than any oven you have ever opened. Hot enough to make the very idea of swimming there not just impossible, but almost absurd. And yet it is, in its own alien way, an ocean. A globe wrapped in hot and heavy water under a sky that has never once been blue. It is a quiet reminder that water, the most familiar and comforting substance in all our lives, the thing we are mostly made of, can become something utterly strange and unrecognizable under the right pressures, in the right dark and distant corner of the galaxy. And there is a soft lesson hidden in that, the kind worth carrying gently toward sleep, the most ordinary things we know, the water in a glass, the air in a room, the warmth of a stone left out in the sun, are not fixed and final in their nature. Push them hard enough, take them far enough, and they reveal sides of themselves we never suspected. Become things we would not recognize, things that have no name in our small and comfortable lives. The universe is endlessly inventive that way. It takes the plainest materials, the same handful of simple substances scattered everywhere, the same water and rock and metal and gas, and it arranges them under heat and cold and pressure and time into an endless variety of worlds, no two of them alike. We are made of the very same stuff as that distant boiling ocean. The same water moves through us both. And yet, what a difference a little distance makes. A little heat, a little pressure. The difference between a cool drink on a quiet night and an ocean that could never be touched. It is humbling, and it is wonderful, and it is a gentle thing to rest your tired mind upon. From a strange ocean, we move to a place of fire, and here we meet a world that seems to break a rule you would have sworn could never be broken. It sits about 650 light years away. In a part of the sky our ancestors long ago mapped as a great bird in flight, wings spread across the stars. It is a small world now, smaller than the Earth and lighter, less than half the Earth's mass. A modest little thing, but it was not always so small. Once, long ago, it was a giant, a swollen ball of gas roughly the size of mighty Jupiter, one of the lords of its solar system. And then its star grew old. This is the fate that waits for stars like our own sun. When they near the end of their long lives, having burned through their fuel, they do not simply fade, they swell. They bloat outward into enormous, cooler, redder stars, ballooning to many times their old size, until they swallow the worlds that circle closest to them. That is exactly what happened here. The aging star expanded and engulfed its giant planet, drew it inside its own outer layers, and the planet spent ages buried within the body of its own dying sun, its thick atmosphere stripped and boiled and torn away into space, layer after layer, until almost nothing was left. What survived that ordeal is what remains today. The planet's hot iron heart, its dense metallic core, laid bare. A scorched and naked ember of a world that was once a giant, still slowly evaporating even now, perhaps destined in time to shrink away to nothing at all. Like a coal that grows smaller and smaller until the fire finally takes the last of it. And here's the part that defies belief. The part worth saying slowly. Because this charred little world orbits so terribly close to its star, far closer than the innermost planet of our own solar system ever dares to come to the sun, 65 times closer than that. The heat that pours upon it is almost beyond the reach of imagination. Its temperature reaches something near 12,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now hold that figure gently against this one, the surface of our own sun, the surface of an actual living star, the thing every school child is taught to picture as the hottest object in all our sky, sits at only about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So this planet, this small dead core of a vanished giant, is hotter than the surface of the very star it circles. A planet hotter than a sun. Read that again and let it land. We had thought of stars as the furnaces of the universe, and planets as the cool things that gather around them. And here is a planet that has turned that order upside down. If you were ever searching for a place to set a vision of the underworld, of some realm of endless fire, you could hardly invent anything fiercer than this small, real, burning world. Let us cool ourselves, if only a little, by drifting to the next world, though the comfort it offers is a strange one, because here it does not snow. Here it rains iron. This world lies about 640 light-years away, and it is nearly as heavy as Jupiter, a true giant. It is locked in a fixed and unchanging embrace with its star, the way our own moon is locked to the earth, always showing us the same familiar face, never once turning to reveal its back. And so one side of this planet faces its star forever, held in an endless blazing day that never cools into evening, while the other side is turned away forever, lost in an endless cold night that never sees a dawn. There is no sunrise on this world. There is no sunset. There is only the eternal day on one half and the eternal night on the other, and a thin band of permanent twilight between them where the two meet. On the day side, the heat reaches more than 4,300 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough that iron itself cannot stay solid, cannot even stay liquid, but simply boils away into vapor and rises up into the sky as a metallic haze. Imagine that for a moment. A sky filled not with clouds of water, but with the evaporated breath of molten metal. The radiation pouring down onto that day side is thousands of times stronger than the gentle sunlight that warms your face on a summer afternoon. A relentless flood of energy with no night to relieve it. And the night side, turned away from all that fury, lies far colder, almost twice as cold, a vast dark hemisphere that has never felt the light. Now think slowly about what must happen in the space between those two halves of the world. On one side, a furnace beyond any furnace we could build. On the other, a deep and ancient chill. And between them, where such fierce difference meets, a wind must blow. A constant and tremendous wind racing always from the hot side toward the cold. That wind picks up the vaporized iron from the blazing day side and carries it around the curve of the planet toward the dark. And there, as it crosses into the cold of the night side, the iron vapor cools and gathers and condenses and falls. It rains, not water, molten metal, drifting down out of an alien sky onto a world where the evening forecast, if anyone were there to give it, would call for a chance of iron showers after dark, clearing toward morning that never comes. It is a terrible and beautiful image at once. And it is real, and it is happening right now, 640 light years away. The iron rising on the bright side and falling on the dark side, over and over, forever, whether any eye is there to watch it or not. And yet, strange as it is, there is a kind of rhythm in it that the mind can rest against. The iron rises and the iron falls. The wind blows always in the one direction, never tiring, never turning back. The day side never cools, the night side never warms, and between them, that great patient circulation goes around and around without beginning or end. The way a wheel turns, the way breath moves in and out, the way the seasons come and go at home. We tend to think of strangeness as something restless and unsettling, but much of the strangeness out there is also deeply, profoundly steady. The same vast motions repeating across ages so long they make our own lives seem the briefest of flickers. That burning world has been raining its metal in exactly this way since long before the first human being looked up at the sky. And it will go on raining it long after the last of us is gone, faithful to its own strange weather, asking nothing, changing nothing, simply turning in its fixed embrace with its star, one face to the fire, one face to the dark, world without end. The next world is perhaps the strangest of them all, and to understand it, you have to first understand the dead star that it circles. When certain massive stars reach the end of their lives, they collapse inward so violently, with such unimaginable force, that their very atoms are crushed together into something almost beyond comprehension, a small, impossibly dense ball of packed matter that we call a neutron star. This particular one is tiny, only about 12 miles across, smaller than many a city, a thing you could, in principle, drive across in a matter of minutes if there were any way to stand upon it. And yet, for all its smallness, it is so unthinkably dense that a single teaspoon of its material would weigh billions of tons here on Earth, more than a mountain, more than you could ever picture. It spins, too, at a speed that makes the mind reel, turning all the way around once every 5.4 thousandths of a single second, which means it whirls about 10,000 times in 1 minute. Spinning so fast, it is hard to even call it spinning, sweeping beams of radiation out through space as it goes, like a lighthouse turning at a speed no lighthouse could ever survive. And around this furious, tiny corpse of a star, there orbits a planet. But it is no ordinary planet, because of what it once was, long, long ago. It was a star in its own right, a companion sun shining beside its neighbor. But that neighbor, the whirling neutron star, slowly and patiently stripped away its outer layers over the ages, peeling the dying companion like fruit, drawing its gases away across the empty space between them, pulling and pulling until almost nothing was left at all. And what survived that long undoing was the dense, crushed remnant of the old star's very heart. And here is the quiet wonder of it. That remnant is made largely of carbon, squeezed under pressures we can scarcely imagine. Carbon, squeezed hard enough and long enough, becomes the one thing we have prized above almost all others, the thing we set into rings and pass down through families. It becomes diamond. So what circles that tiny, mad, spinning star is, in all likelihood, a world of crystal, a planet roughly 5 times the size of the Earth, yet more massive than Jupiter despite being so much smaller, a dense and glittering thing that may be, in great part, a single colossal diamond turning silently in the dark. And because it orbits so very close to its tiny partner, the entire system, the star and the planet both, the whole arrangement of them together, could fit within the width of our own ordinary sun. An entire little solar system, a star and its world, smaller across than one single common star. There is something almost unbearably lovely in the thought of it, a jewel the size of a world, turning quietly beside a spinning ember, in a corner of the galaxy no one will ever visit, shining for no one, faithful to no one, simply there. Let yourself rest on that image for a moment longer, because it is a gentle one to hold as you grow drowsy, a diamond larger than the Earth, turning without sound, without witness, without any need to be seen. It does not wait for us. It does not wonder whether anyone knows it is there. It simply turns, slowly and faithfully, beside its small, fierce star, as it is turned for longer than there have been eyes anywhere to look upon it, and as it will go on turning long after the last of us has closed our own eyes for the final time. And somehow, that thought is not a lonely one at all. It is a quiet one, a steadying one. There is so much in this universe that asks nothing of us, that simply is, that goes on being beautiful in the dark, whether we are watching or sleeping or gone. We are not needed to keep it turning. We are only, now and then, lucky enough to learn that it is there. After all that crushing pressure and density, let us drift now to the very opposite extreme, to a world so light that it hardly seems to count as solid at all. This planet is about the same size as Jupiter, broad and round, a proper giant by all appearances, the kind of world that should be heavy and commanding. But when the astronomers carefully weighed it, by watching how it tugged upon its star, they found it almost absurdly, comically light, only about 30 times the mass of the Earth, where Jupiter, for that very same size, is 300 times the Earth's mass. So here is a giant with almost nothing inside it, a great round shape with hardly any substance to fill it. Its core, the dense and heavy heart that a planet of that size ought to possess, turns out to be far smaller than anyone expected, only a few times the mass of the Earth where it should have been many times more. And so the whole world has so little real matter packed into so much volume that its density falls lower than almost anything else we know of in the sky. When the scientists searched for a way to describe it, they reached not for some forbidding technical phrase, but for the gentlest and most childlike image they could find. They said it was like cotton candy, a giant ball of spun sugar floating in the dark, or a marshmallow the size of a planet, soft and pale and impossibly fluffy, so light that, in the old daydream that scientists sometimes allow themselves, if you could somehow find an ocean vast enough to set it in, this entire world would not sink. It would bob gently on the surface and float, a planet bobbing like a cork. And its very existence sent the people who study how planets are made back to their notebooks, gently puzzled. Because nothing in their careful old rules quite explained how something so very large could end up so very wonderfully, impossibly light. It is a soft thing to picture as you settle deeper. This great pale planet that weighs almost nothing for its size. Think of how a cloud can stand as tall as a mountain and yet hold scarcely any weight at all. How it drifts and changes shape and asks nothing of the sky that carries it. This world is something like that, only vast beyond any cloud. A swollen sphere of the faintest substance, so thinly filled that if you could reach into it, your hand would meet almost nothing, only a slow thickening of haze, gentle and warm and yielding. There is no hardness anywhere in it to push against. It is all softness, all air and the memory of air. A planet that is mostly room, mostly space, mostly the quiet between things. And it turns out there are more worlds like it scattered across the sky than anyone first expected. These soft and puffy giants, far lighter than they have any right to be, drifting around their stars like enormous dandelion seeds, so delicate it seems a strong wind might carry them away. Though of course there is no wind out there, only the long slow turning and the dark and the patient light of their distant suns. Now, among all these worlds of fire and metal and crystal and spun sugar, you might begin to wonder whether the universe holds anywhere gentle at all. Anywhere a person could imagine, even in a quiet dream, setting down a foot. And so we come to a kinder, softer world, one that has long stirred a particular hope in the hearts of the people who spend their lives searching the sky. It sits comfortably close to us, within 20 light years, which, by the staggering scale of everything else we have visited tonight, is practically next door, a neighbor just down the cosmic street. It is heavier than the Earth, about 6 times our mass, a sturdy and substantial world. And most importantly of all, it lies in what astronomers call the habitable zone of its star. That phrase deserves to be unfolded gently, because it holds so much hope inside it. The habitable zone is the narrow band of distance around a star where a world is neither so close that its water would boil away into nothing, nor so far that its water would freeze forever into ice. It is the gentle ring, the comfortable middle distance, where liquid water might rest upon a surface, and where, just possibly, life of some kind might take hold and endure. It is sometimes called, fondly, the zone where things are not too hot and not too cold, but just right. The way the smallest bear's porridge was just right in the old story we were told as children. But even this hopeful world carries its own strangeness, like the iron rain world we just left behind. It always shows the same single face to its star. So one side lives in perpetual day, and the other in perpetual night. You might think the dark side would simply freeze into a lifeless waste of ice. But this world wears an atmosphere thick with carbon dioxide, a heavy blanket of gas that traps the warmth and carries it slowly around the globe, keeping even the night side from freezing utterly solid. And so, if any place upon such a world could ever be kind to living things, it would not be the scorched eternal day or the frozen eternal night, but the soft band between them, the gentle ring of permanent dusk where the two halves meet, a place astronomers have given the lovely name, the Twilight Zone. Imagine standing there, just for a moment, a sun forever low upon the horizon, never rising, never setting, hanging in one fixed place, casting long golden light across a still land caught eternally between the dawn and the dusk. The warm half of the world at your back, the cold half stretching away before you, and you on the gentle line between, in a light that never changes and a calm that never ends. It is one of the very few images in all of this strange catalog that feels, somehow, peaceful. Let us linger there a while, on that gentle line, because it is a restful place to be. There would be no rush of morning on such a world, no harsh alarm of dawn, no sudden glare to startle you awake, and no plunge into sudden night either, no moment when the light is snatched away. There would be only the long, unchanging hour of dusk, holding steady forever, the sun resting low and golden and still, the shadows lying long and soft across a quiet land. The day you know at home is a thing of edges, of beginnings and endings, of the clock pushing you from 1 hour into the next. But on the gentle line of that twilight world, time would seem to loosen its grip. There would be no next hour pressing in. There would be only the one calm light, and the warmth at your back, and the cool stretching away before you, and the deep and settled stillness of a world that has stopped turning and simply rests, held forever in the soft place between the brightness and the dark. Of all the places we have wandered tonight, that is perhaps the one where a tired traveler might most wish to lie down for a while and close their eyes, and let the long gold light watch over them. The next world reminds us how easy it is to overlook the most extraordinary things, even when they have been sitting right there in front of us all along. For years, astronomers knew of a certain planet drifting far out in space, and for years they believed it was utterly alone, a lonely wanderer with no star to call its own. One of those orphan worlds that are thought to roam the great dark between the stars without any sun to warm them, drifting in eternal night, and separately, quite separately, for years. They also knew of a certain star. Both objects had been catalogued. Both were familiar. Both had their entries in the great lists astronomers keep. But no one, in all that time, had noticed that the two of them belonged together. It is worth pausing on the loneliness that was imagined for that world before the truth was known. because it is a feeling we all understand. To be an orphan world is to drift through the deepest cold there is, with no sun to mark your days, no warmth upon your face, no anchor anywhere, only the slow fall through endless dark, turning and turning with nothing to turn around. Astronomers had supposed there were many such wanderers out there, cast loose somehow from the families that made them, set adrift to roam between the stars forever. And for a long while this particular world was counted among them, written down as solitary, given up to the dark. It is a quiet kind of sorrow, even to think of, a world wandering with no one and nothing to hold it. Then, one day, someone did the simple arithmetic, the kind of patient comparison that so often unlocks these things, and realized that the lonely planet and the distant star were both about the same distance from us, roughly 104 light years, and that they were drifting through space in the very same direction, at the very same unhurried pace, like two travelers who turn out, after years, to have been walking the same long road all along. They were not strangers at all. They were bound to each other across the dark, partners in a vast and silent dance. But what a dance it is, and what a slow one. This planet does indeed orbit its star, but at a distance so enormous that it strains the very meaning of the word orbit. It circles its sun from something like 621 billion miles away, which is roughly 7,000 times the distance from the Earth to our own sun. At that unthinkable range, the star, its star, the thing that anchors it, must look like little more than another bright point among all the others, barely brighter than the scattered background of the night, hardly a sun at all. And one full trip around that star, one single year on this faraway world, takes about 900,000 of our years. 900,000 years for a single orbit. Pause and let that settle. Think of everything that has happened on Earth in the last 900,000 years. The whole long rise of our human story. The slow shaping of our bodies and our minds. The lighting of the first fires, the building of every city that has ever stood, the telling of every tale that has ever been told. In all of that immense stretch of time, this distant world has completed but a single patient lap around its faraway sun. There is something almost calming in a clock that slow, a year longer than the entire memory of our species, a single quiet circle that takes longer to draw than all of human history has lasted. And then there is a world whose true marvel is not the planet itself, but what surrounds it. For around this distant giant, astronomers caught sight of something they had hoped, for a very long time, to witness with their own instruments. We have always believed, in theory, deep in our understanding of how the cosmos works, that the moons of giant planets are born from a disk of dust and gas that circles the young planet, the leftover rubble of its own formation, slowly clumping and gathering and rounding itself together over long ages, into small round worlds. We believed it firmly. The mathematics demanded it. But we had never actually seen it happening anywhere except in our own ancient past. A process frozen and finished billions of years ago, long before anyone was here to watch. Then, with the help of a great array of telescopes set high in the clear, dry mountains of Chile, where the air is thin and the nights are dark and the sky is as steady as anywhere on Earth, scientists found, circling this faraway young planet, exactly such a disk. A swirling ring of dust and gas with enough substance gathered in it to build 3 whole moons, each one about the size of our own familiar moon. And so, for the first time in the entire history of our species, human beings were watching moons being born around another world. Not in a computer simulation, not in a careful diagram in a textbook, not in a story about the distant past, but actually out there, unfolding in real space, in real time. The very same process that gave our own moon to the Earth billions of years ago, now playing out again before our living eyes. We arrived, by the smallest of cosmic coincidences, just in time to pull up a chair and watch a small new family of worlds quietly beginning to form. There is a tenderness in that. If you let yourself feel it as you drift, somewhere out there, right now, in no hurry whatsoever, moons are being made, not made all at once, not built in a day, but gathered slowly, gently, out of a great soft ring of dust and gas, grain drifting toward grain, the small clinging to the small, the whole patient cloud of it turning and turning, and slowly, slowly drawing itself together into round and quiet worlds. It is the same unhurried way our own moon was made, long before there was anyone here to name it. The same way the earth itself was gathered out of the dust around a young sun. We so rarely get to see a beginning. We arrive in the middle of things, into a world already old, already finished, already turning. But here, in this one distant place, the beginning is still happening, still unfolding, with all the time in the universe to take. There is no deadline out there. There is no hurry. A moon may take an age to gather itself, and the ring of dust does not mind in the least. And neither, tonight, do you. You can let that slowness in. You can let it become your own. There's nothing that must be finished before you sleep. The moons are not finished either, and they are perfectly, beautifully at peace. The last of these worlds is strange not for its weather or its weight, but for the sky it lives beneath. It is a planet about half the size of Saturn, and at first, the scientists very nearly ignored it altogether, set it aside, because the system it belonged to seemed too tangled, too complicated, too improbable to be real. More like something dreamed up in a work of fiction than something the sober universe would actually trouble itself to build. But when they finally looked closely, patiently, they found that this planet does not circle one star, or even 2. It belongs to a family of 3 suns. Let us take the shape of that family slowly, because it is a delicate thing to picture. The planet orbits one star closely, its own near sun. That star, in turn, has a companion, a second sun, and the two of them swing around each other, a slow and stately pair, once every 30 years. And then, farther out still, bound to both of them by the long, invisible threads of gravity, a third star circles the pair from a great distance, taking about 400 years to complete each enormous, unhurried loop. Imagine, now, the view from such a world, and let yourself drift into it. Picture yourself hovering quietly just at the edge of its atmosphere, looking out across it. Below you, dark brown and gray clouds, churning slowly, lit from above. And up in the sky, not one sun but two, hanging together in the same stretch of heaven. One of them looks far larger than our own sun ever appears to us, perhaps 17 times broader across, a great dominating disk of light, and the other is much smaller and dimmer beside it, only a fraction as bright, a modest companion. And yet even that fainter, lesser sun, the dim one, the small one, would still shine in that alien sky 1,000 times more brightly than the full moon shines down on the very calmest night here at home. Two suns, then one great and one small, casting double shadows of everything across a world of slow brown clouds, while somewhere far off in that same sky, a third sun drifts, too distant now to warm anything at all, but bright enough still to be the most brilliant star in that planet's long, strange nights. It is a sky no human eye has ever truly seen, and perhaps never will. And yet, it is real, and it is out there, turning quietly through its tangled years, entirely whether or not we ever come to look upon it. And just when you think the universe has surely shown you the full range of its strangeness, that there can be nothing left to surprise you, the scientists offer one more idea, still only a possibility, still unproven, still floating in the realm of the perhaps, but far too wonderful to leave out of any honest tour of the strange. They wonder whether planets might form not only around stars, in the warm and ordinary way, but around the great dark hearts of galaxies, around black holes, around the enormous swirling clouds of gas and dust that gather and spiral around those vast, silent, devouring monsters. The very same gentle process that draws ordinary planets together around ordinary suns might, in theory, gather worlds of its own, born in the strangest nursery imaginable. These hypothetical worlds even have a tentative name, a soft new word that scientists have quietly coined for a thing no one has ever seen. And if they truly exist, they would drift at tremendous distances from the black holes they belong to, far enough to be safe from being swallowed, taking perhaps millions of years to complete a single slow orbit, circling the darkest and most powerful objects in all of creation. Worlds of unimaginable patience orbiting the unimaginable. We do not know if they are real. We may not know for a very long time, but the simple fact that we can even ask the question The fact that the universe has so often, so generously, answered yes when we dared to wonder whether something this strange could be, is itself a kind of quiet marvel, a reason to keep wondering. So why does any of this matter, you might gently ask, here in the dark, far from any of these distant worlds? Why should it matter to you, lying here, that somewhere a planet rains iron, or that a giant wears rings the size of a solar system, or that a diamond turns in the dark beside a whirling dead star? These places are unreachable. We will almost certainly never stand on any of them. No ship we could build in 1,000 years would carry us there. And yet it matters. I think, for a reason that has nothing at all to do with travel, nothing to do with ever setting foot upon them. It matters because every single one of these worlds began as a flat, unremarkable line on someone's screen, a faint dimming, a tiny wobble, a number that simply did not quite fit the way it was supposed to. It matters because time and time and time again, the universe has turned out to be stranger and richer and more generous than the careful, sensible, reasonable people of each generation expected it to be. We thought other solar systems would look like ours. They did not. We thought a planet could not possibly be hotter than its own star, or lighter than spun sugar, or wrapped in rings wider than the whole orbit of the Earth, or made of crystal, or rained upon by molten iron. We were wrong, gently and gloriously wrong, again and again and again. And each and every time, we were wrong. It was not because the universe had broken its rules. It was because we had not yet looked closely enough, or patiently enough, or with quite enough willingness to be surprised by what was actually there. There is something deeply reassuring in that. If you let yourself feel it, here in the dark, the small, ordinary world you live in, the world of bills and errands, and the things left undone, and the things said wrong, that whole familiar world is wrapped, every moment, inside a universe of almost unlimited wonder, a place where the rules are far wider and far softer than we ever once guessed. A place still mostly unexplored, still mostly unseen, still full of worlds no one has named, and the same patient curiosity that found a planet's vast shadow hidden in 15-year-old data, that sat quietly with a difficult problem for years until at last it came clear. That is the very same gentle quality that lets a person sit quietly with their own life and discover, slowly, that it too holds far more room and far more possibility than they had imagined. You do not have to solve anything tonight. You do not have to reach any distant world, or understand it, or hold on to it. It is enough, sometimes, simply to know that they are all out there, turning in the dark, glowing their strange colors, raining their strange rains, keeping their slow and patient years, entirely indifferent to whether the day you just had was hard or easy, kind or cruel. The universe is vast, and it was vast long, long before any of your troubles. And it will go on being vast long after every one of them has been forgotten. And there is a strange and gentle comfort in being a small, warm, breathing thing tucked safely inside something so enormous and so beautifully indifferent and so quietly full of wonders. Let us take a slow breath here and let the wonder settle into something softer, because there is no more to learn tonight, only a little more to feel, and then nothing at all to do but rest. Think of all those worlds we have visited together, hanging out there in the great dark like lanterns set at different distances, some near, some impossibly far, each one glowing in its own quiet way. The pink ember, cooling so slowly, the hidden ocean of hot and restless water, the dead little giant that grew hotter than its own sun, the world where iron rises on the bright side and falls as rain on the dark, the diamond turning beside the spinning star, the marshmallow giant that would float upon an ocean, the gentle twilight world with its band of permanent dusk, the lonely wanderer with its single year longer than all of human history, the young planet ringed by the dust of moons not yet born, the strange world beneath two suns, with a third drifting far away in its sky. And at the very center of it all, the one that first set us drifting on this long journey, the great ringed giant whose shadow once dimmed a star for 56 days, and whose rings, 200 times grander than Saturn's, span nearly the entire distance from the Earth to the Sun. And if you would like to hold the whole of it together one last time, before you let it all go, let it gather softly into a single quiet story. It begins, as these things so often do, with someone simply looking. It begins with a graduate student bent over old data, sifting patiently through the brightness of young stars, asking a small and reasonable question on a long and ordinary evening. It begins with one star, out of so many thousands, that did something it should not have done, dimming and flickering and nearly vanishing across 56 slow days. It begins with a bold and risky idea, and the doubt that came with it, and the choice not to let it fade. It moves on to a quiet astronomer across the ocean, building his careful model ring by ring, month after month, year after year, until at last the shape came clear, and the shape was a world wrapped in rings the size of a solar system. And from that one impossible world, the door swung open onto all the others, the pink one and the burning one and the diamond one and the floating one and the gentle twilight one, world after world after world, each stranger than the last, each one once just a flicker of doubt in someone's patient data, each one now a real place turning somewhere in the real dark. That is the whole of it. That is the story. And now it is told, and there is nothing left of it for you to carry. You have come a long way tonight. You have crossed hundreds of light years and visited a dozen impossible worlds, and watched moons being born and metal falling from alien skies, and a single faint star dimming behind something vast and unseen. And now there is nothing left for you to do. There is nothing to remember, no fact you need to keep, no name or number you must hold on to until morning. You can let all of it go now. Let the names drift away, the distances, the temperatures, the strange and lovely details. They do not need you to keep them safe. They will go on turning whether you remember them or not. Faithfully, patiently, forever. So let them loosen and let them float gently off, one by one, like small paper lanterns set adrift upon dark and quiet water, drifting slowly outward, growing smaller and dimmer, and finally fading from view, until there is only the calm and the dark, and your own slow breathing. Let your attention come back, slowly, from those far places, back across all that emptiness, back to this room, back to the simple weight of your own body resting where it rests. Feel how heavy your limbs have become, how they sink gently into whatever holds them, asking nothing of you. Let your hands grow soft. Let the small muscles around your eyes, the ones that worked all day, finally let go. Let your jaw loosen. Let your shoulders settle down away from your ears. There is nothing pulling at you now, nothing to reach for, nothing to fix. And let your breathing slow on its own, the way the tide slows as it reaches the top of the shore, each breath a little softer than the last, coming and going without any effort from you, like waves arriving gently on a calm beach in the dark, rising, falling, rising, falling, slower and slower still. You do not need to count them. You do not need to deepen them or change them in any way. Just let each one arrive when it arrives and leave when it leaves. The way the worlds we visited tonight keep their own slow time without ever being told to. Far away, a great ringed giant turns once in its long year. A pale pink world cools by a measure too small to see. A diamond turns beside its spinning star, and a soft and puffy giant drifts in the dark. And a new moon gathers itself, grain by patient grain, out of a ring of dust. None of them hurry, none of them strain. They simply go on in their own gentle time, and your breath can go on the very same way now, unhurried, unforced, each one carrying you a little further down, a little deeper into the quiet, like a slow stair descending softly into sleep. The day is finished now. Whatever it held, whatever it asked of you, it is done, and it is behind you, and it does not need to be carried into the night. There is nothing you have to do. There is nowhere you have to be. You are here, and you are warm, and you are safe, and that is enough. That is all that is asked of you now, to be here, to be warm, to be still, far above you, far beyond this room and this night. Those distant worlds go on turning in the quiet dark, asking nothing, needing nothing, simply being what they are. The great ringed giant turns slowly with its faint pale bands. The pink ember cools by the smallest measure. Somewhere, gently, a new moon is being born from a ring of dust, in no hurry at all, with all the patience in the universe. And you, here, are a part of that same vast and gentle dark, held within it, small and safe and exactly where you belong. There is nothing more to think about now. There is nothing more to do. The worlds will keep their slow and patient years without you. The stars will hold their light, and you can rest. Rest now. Sleep deeply, and let the gentle dark hold you until morning.